Good evening everyone, and welcome to the Canning Highways Committee meeting today, Thursday the 30th of March. Please be aware that the Council is video recording this meeting and this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I would like to highlight some key points of the meeting format. Please can I ask everyone to have their phones turned off or set to silent, please. The fire exits are via the doors out of the chambers and down the external fire escape stairs or via the main entrance that you enter the building through. In the event of a fire, the lift should be not used. The assembly point is outside the Royal Mail Parcel Office on West Street. Please remain seated unless you are invited to speak or need to take a comfort break. The toilet facilities are out in the corridor where you entered on the left-hand side. Members of the public are invited to participate in the meeting with key points as follows. Public participation is limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person and must be relating to an item of business on the agenda. As Chair, I will interject if needed to enforce this. For those looking to speak specifically about planning or tree works applications on the agenda, you will be invited to speak immediately before the committee considers that application. For those looking to speak on non-planning application business, you will be invited to speak during the public participation agenda item. Please raise your hand to show you wish to speak and I will invite you to speak. If you are comfortable standing, please do so to ensure you can be heard across the room. You do not need to state your name when you start speaking if you do not wish. But we ask that you clearly state which agenda item you are speaking about. I would ask that participants looking to leave in the meeting wait until the end of an agenda item to limit distractions for other participants. Members of the public looking to leave the building will need to be escorted out by a council officer. If the meeting goes into confidential session, a short 2-minute break will be held to allow members of the public to leave. To all present, please remember to show respect to others in the meeting and avoid interrupting where possible to enable others to follow the meeting. If any councillor feels concerned about any aspect of the meeting or discussion, please clearly state point of order. I will then gesture for you to elaborate. If anyone present is felt to be behaving unacceptably, they can be ejected from the meeting by resolution. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the Council, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this Town Council meeting. Thank you. That leads us on to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, so good evening everybody. There are 3 apologies. Councillor Everton has work commitment, Councillor Lord has a work commitment, and Councillor Borman has a personal commitment this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of disclosure of pecuniary interests and interests other than pecuniary interests, as defined under the C4 Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. I'd just like to say that I've got an interest on Manor Farm buildings, Bishopstone, because I know the person quite well.
Okay.
And I won't speak on that one.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair, I think Councillor Argent wishes to speak.
Councillor Argent.
French Market in, got the date now.
On agenda.
Road closure, item 6, isn't it?
On agenda item 6.
Okay.
Okay. Agenda item 3, public participation, to deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public in accordance with relevant legislation and C4 Town Council policy in accordance In accordance with Town Council policy, members of the public wishing to speak on individual planning applications may do so immediately before each planning application. So at this point it's on non-planning applications. So if anybody would like to speak at this point? No?
We're here for specific items, Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
It's item 5.
Item 5.
So I think we'll
We'll wait till item 5.
we'll still wait till item 5.
As if it
Follow
as if it
normal, otherwise it will just
Yeah.
fair one, Jeff, Chair. I think we'll say item 5.
Item 4 of the agenda is planning applications. Planning applications received in week commencing Monday 6th of March. LW/23/0094, 12 Keydale Road. Replacement front porch with 2-storey extension with gable end roof and first floor side extension with gable end roof. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Councillor
Chair,
Edson.
I don't see anything really outstanding with this application, so I would propose that we accept that one.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Argent. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
Mr. Chair, thank you.
LW/23/0123, 3 Lansdowne Road. Demolition of existing garage, erection of 2-storey side extension and single-storey rear extension. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Councillor Hunman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on this particular one, it seems to mirror the house next door, where they've seemed to have demolished their garage and done something similar. So I'm quite happy to do this for similar to this particular. It's just very substantial, but it does fit in with that area.
Okay, thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Edson. Any other comments? Can I have a show of hands supporting this application?
Lord Chair, thank you.
Planning applications received in the week commencing Monday the 13th of March. LW/23/0118, 17 Valley Drive, single-storey side extension, demolition of existing conservatory. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Councillor Honeyman.
Yeah, the property is quite steep from the road. There it is, or it's on a hill, like a lot of them are in that particular road, and I can see what they're trying to do there. I mean, the Conservatives sort of have it say probably, and they're replacing it effectively with an extension and making it improving the situation at the same time. So I'd support it.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Argent. Any other comments? And can I have a show of hands supporting this application?
Mr. Chair, thank you.
LW/22/0659, 35 Heathfield Road, erection of 1 single-storey dwelling and associated hard and soft landscaping within the rear garden area of 35 Heathfield Road. Material alterations to 35 Heathfield Road to include erection of an attached garage and provision of driveway with vehicle access into Heathfield Road. Revised plans. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Right. Go with you first.
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Anne Lloyd and I live at 23 Cornfield Road. I only wish to object to part of the application, which is the erection of a dwelling. I'd like to speak in opposition to this application to build a bungalow in the garden of number 35. I feel that the dimensions of the proposed build are still disproportionate to the existing property, despite what I understand to have been a 25% reduction in the overall footprint. Also, this proposal would not be in keeping with the characterful nature of the surrounding properties. The dimensions of the roof are some cause for concern. I suspect that the space which would be provided by such a roof would soon be utilised to create a second storey. I also note from the plan that the proposed living accommodation will be facing predominantly in a northerly direction and other windows facing east and west, with, unsurprisingly, only one small window facing in the direction of the applicant's property. I have been nurturing an oak tree in my garden for the past 30 years, which is situated adjacent to the applicant's property, and it is starting to develop into a fine specimen. I suspect that sadly this will die if the roots are damaged during any excavation for footings were this application to be allowed. Therefore, members of the committee, I would urge you to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Carolyn Hart and I'm 21 Cornfield Road. The rear of this proposed building faces the rear of the back of our house. So, as a point of note, on the details that have come through, Part 1.2.1 states that the plot's rear boundaries back on 27 and 29 Cornfield Road. This is incorrect. The rear boundaries back onto 21 and 23, so that should really be corrected. The proposed building appears to be just under 20 foot high. The height from the attic floor to the apex of the roof is the same as the ground floor dwelling rooms. The plans show a Velux window, which suggests that there is a future intention to convert the roof space into habitable rooms. I'm wondering whether this is all a bit of a Trojan horse. Should this be allowed to happen, it would give a direct view into my lounge, dining room and garden, 21 Cornfield Road, and therefore be an invasion of privacy. Effectively, the proposed roof height is the same as a two-storey flat-roofed building. On the G3 architectural details, it states that a two-storey building in this location would be considered overbearing and would have an adverse effect on neighbouring properties. If this sentiment was being adhered to, there is no reason for the roof to be so high. To protect the neighbours from this overbearing building proposal, the pitch of the roof should be reduced. It is possible to use 13% pitch tiles, which would result in the apex being reduced and thus rendering the roof space uninhabitable. I believe that a restrictive covenant should be placed on this building proposal to restrict the dwelling in the roof space and disable any prospect of future height additions in perpetuity. This building will undoubtedly have an adverse effect on us. It will change our aspect. We have a roof line completely along our rear boundary, and at the moment we've just got vegetation, so of course it will change it. The prospect of the removal of 25 trees plus hedges is a tragic loss. There are insufficient details of how the specific remedial landscaping and tree planting is intended to be mitigating this loss. We also have a very large impressive oak tree at the bottom of our garden. It has not been incorporated in the proposed protected root protection plans as some neighbouring trees have. Our oak, whilst its base is approximately 4 metres distant from number 35's rear boundary, it stands at approximately 9 metres high, has a very large crown, a circumference of 4 foot, I was out there measuring it today, the radius of 16 inches, which then calculates it to be circa 70 years old. It is possible that number 35 will wish to remove some of the branches, in which case I wish to be consulted at that point and assured that any felling be conducted by proper tree specialists and the nesting season is avoided. Additionally, I would like our tree to be surveyed to assess the likely negative impact on its root system, as the roots will certainly have transgressed into the soil of 35. Concrete and the footings, etc., it's likely that that will impact terribly. The flint wall is specified as probably being a barrier, but this is a 70-year-old tree, and I'm not sure when the flint wall was built. I think that's unlikely, so I've got a question mark about that. I'm really concerned that this tree is
Can you come
preserved.
into your name?
Sorry, I'm done now.
You sure? Okay,
Yeah, that's
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Evening, James Bennett, 28 Eastfield Road. in view of the fact that in 2008, there was an appeal to the government inspectorate regarding this type of development at 27 Southdown Road, which in fact it would have meant that it would be facing and accessing Heathfield Road, 2 doors from me. And the inspector said at the time that this type of development is inappropriate for this type of area, which has historical and important issues for Seaford. That's the first point I would like to make. The second point is that the development itself means that there's a loss of space. That loss of space is characteristic of the properties in Heathfield Road, Southdown Road, Headland Avenue, that particular area. We have large areas at the back of the houses. This all adds to the unique characteristic of the area. Building these backland developments actually takes away that space that we have enjoyed not only as present occupants and residents but previous for nearly 18-90 years. Second point, conservation significance. This is an area of historical significance for Seaford. These are buildings which are built of brick, tile and hung tile in some cases. They are very distinctive in their nature, and the area is very distinctive in its nature, and these back builds again of the type of property which are speculative, and they take away the space and they destroy the characteristic area in nature. Historical significance, I've already mentioned the fact that it's an area of unique and historical importance to Seaford, and the type of dwellings that we actually have and we have constructed in that area are very significant. Next one is loss of trees. It's all been explained by this lady here from number 21, Thornfield, and I think it's really significant that the damage done to this particular oak tree would probably mean that it would probably die, and because the roots of it are going to be at least 15 metres away from the base of the tree, which means that they're really stretching onto the back of number 35, and therefore they're going to be severely destroyed during the construction of this building. The building itself is totally out of character with houses that have been built in the area. And the other significant thing about this particular building is that it is over 20 feet high, according to the plans, which indicates to me, with the fact that there is a Velux window already in there, that this is an ideal opportunity for developing further and for increasing the number of people that can live in the property, and use of rooms by extending with dormer windows. The other thing about the character is there was a house built at number 15A Heathfield Road about 2020, which was approved. It's totally out of character. It destroys the actual line of the properties in the street. When you drive by, it stands there, a big grey monolith just looking straight down the drive, and it's totally out of character, and it should not be used as an example of confirming that this type of building is acceptable in the area.
Can I bring you to the end?
Yes.
4 minutes.
Yeah, okay. The other aspect is that it's overlooking properties to the north and to the west. It's overshadowing properties to the north and to the west. There is a loss of light to the properties to the north and
I'll have
to the west.
draw you to the close
And
now. Thank
my
you.
final point is that I think that denial should be made for this application without advice to amend the development.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other comments? If you've got something fresh to what's all...
Yeah, I live next door.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I live at number 33. I feel like I've come somewhat unprepared, as everyone's got notes and things, but so I'm just speaking
Yeah.
off the cuff. So we're directly next door, number 35, next door to number 35. The flint wall that divides our garden, I did a little experiment this morning, just walked up the side of the garden. It's lower than my head height the whole way up the garden. So from my house to the back of the garden, it's head height. So a 20-foot property built, the actual plans, it comes down halfway down our garden. So the aspect, the loss of privacy is going to be immeasurable. I know on the plans that they said that they will be building a fence line to obscure things, which doesn't really cut it for me, unfortunately. We've got a large patio area at the end of our garden that we use throughout the summer. I've got 4, well, they're not teenagers anymore, but I've got 4 children. We all use that patio area. It has sun all summer. We have a patio at the closer to the house as well, but that is obscured by the house on sunny days. So we use the patio at the top of the garden all summer long for barbecues, for friends, for all sorts. To have a property now next door to that patio area, we'll lose a huge area. We'll lose so much privacy. The prospect of having, I might be sunbathing in the summer, they might be fixing their car on their new driveway, a car engine, a motorbike, anything on a new build in that area that takes up potentially half the length of my garden. We'll lose so much, so much, and the prospect of a Velux in it, like the other people have said, who's going to be looking into my garden? At the moment, the house we're attached to, number 31, that's the only windows that look into our garden. They're in their 70s, they're not likely to be at their windows. In fact, they spend a lot of time in France. So we have no one looking into our garden. If we have a house built at the end of the garden, right next door to, right next door to where we spend a lot of time, it will just be awful. We'll lose so much. To have this, I appreciate that they've changed the plan, they've made it smaller, but for us, it's exactly the same. It's at our boundary. They've taken the garage away, it's made it 25% smaller, but not for us. It's exactly the same. Nothing has changed for us. It's at our boundary line. The flint wall, the patio area, nothing has changed. So I would really like you to say absolutely no way. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm not going to be very popular tonight. Apologies in advance. So good evening, councillors. My name is Michael Grieve and I'm the Director of G3 Architecture. I wanted to be here tonight to explain the amended application and answer any potential questions you may have, and obviously people objecting. The application was previously supported by the councillors and was considered a well thought out scheme. You're aware that the existing property sits within a generous plot. The plot is considered a double plot in terms of its width and depth, and benefits from a double garage and a large gap between the double garage and the main dwelling. Given the wide and deep nature of the plot, my client sought pre-application advice from Lewes District Council for a single-storey bungalow and detached garage back in 2021. The response from Lewes District Council was positive, and this is why a formal application was pursued. At the pre-application stage, the garage was shown detached from the bungalow, with a gap between the bungalow and the garage. When the original formal application was submitted, my client asked us to join the house and the garage together and also extend the front porch. This resulted in the bungalow becoming larger to that which was supported at pre-application stage. Feedback from Lewes District Council was considered over development despite the Town Council's initial support and one neighbour's support, along with a handful of objections which we're hearing tonight. Looking at the neighbours' objections and feedback from Lewes District Council, it was decided to revert the scheme back to the pre-application design, which was supported, and also omit the garage, which would allow a larger garden, and this is where the 25% reduction comes in. This scheme, we feel, sits more comfortably within the plot and allows more amenity space. When looking at the plans, you will see the topographic survey shows what appears to be a loss of a lot of trees. To satisfy the council, a qualified arboriculturist was appointed to carry out an independent tree survey and grade the trees in accordance with the British standards. The arboriculturist graded the 38 trees category C rating, which means they are of low quality and are immature. This came as no surprise to my client, as it was them who planted them when they first moved in approximately 15 years ago. Advice was sought from the qualified arboriculturist in terms of what trees were worth retaining and which ones could be removed. This was also amended on the latest scheme. A detailed landscaping plan would follow a successful planning approval, where my client proposes to plant new trees to offset those being lost. Being mindful of the neighbouring properties and the host dwelling, the proposed bungalow will still be sunk into the ground by 700mm. This in turn will bring the eaves and ridge heights down to a minimum. And I could probably answer a few questions about going up in the roof. The proposed, the roof light is actually over an entrance area only where it's vaulted. The rest of the roof is essentially a truss rafter roof, which if anyone knows about building, you'd have to almost take the roof off to actually go above. So it would be a truss rafter roof up there, not cut and pitch, which would be easy to convert. The design of the bungalow is traditional to reflect the surrounding properties. The roof would just receive plain clay tiles with bonnet hips. Again, there's no gables, so with a hipped roof, it's a lot harder to sort of convert. The layout and orientation of the roof has been designed to maximise solar gain. The roof will receive integrated solar photovoltaic panels and other sustainable things such as B-bricks and bird and bat boxes, etc. Policy, I think this gentleman here was sort of saying, policy obviously changed from that of 2008, which Jeff you'll be aware of. So backland development is now considered supportable, and again, you councillors agreed previously. Another concern from neighbours is the parking allocation. Parking for both the host dwelling and the proposed bungalow can be demonstrated off-road, so it is not considered to be an issue. Looking at the portal, East Sussex County Council Highways have not objected, neither has the Suds Drainage Team. You will be aware of similar backland development sites within Seaford, for example Southdown Road, Farrell Road and Heathfield Road itself. Number 15A, Heathfield Road, sought approval for a bungalow in its rear garden and was approved in 2017, forming 15B. In 2018, Planning Permission was approved for a two-storey contemporary dwelling, which I actually agree is out of keeping, ours is not contemporary, in the rear garden of 15B. So in effect, there's now 15A, 15B and 15C, which started with one house.
I have to bring you to the end.
Okay, thank you. And then just to wrap up, hopefully it can be supported like it was previously being a smaller scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, so I open it to councillors, the committee. Who would like to go first? Councillor.
Chair, I mean, this is a difficult one because it's been approved with changes by the District Council. But I note that Southern Water made a comment that the applicant has not stated details of means of disposal of wastewater. So there are certain things that are questionable. And you know, this is a big thing, you know, when you've got to the sewage system. So I wasn't really in favour of it to start with, but I don't honestly see would it make any difference if we voted against it now. Would they take our thoughts? You know, we've had a second bite.
Do you want to comment?
Yeah, well, if I could just respond to the objectors and to Mr. Grieve. The committee did support the application unanimously in November last year. Mr. Grieve was here, but I think the committee were aware of the objections online, but they obviously didn't have the benefit of the residents coming along and speaking in person. But the Town Council didn't raise any objections, but obviously Lewes District Council did raise some reservations about certain aspects of it, and they appear to have been dealt with. So, I mean, really, it goes back to Lewes District Council for a decision now. Just mentioning a few of the points that were raised. Mr. Bennett raised the idea of backland development. There is a general policy guarding against backland development, but as Mr. Grieve has said, it depends on how much space is available. And there's so much space available here, it's hardly what you call a classic backland development. Although obviously the house being developed in the rear garden does have an impact on surrounding houses at the back and the side. But the question really, as was mentioned, the 15 Heathfield Road development is a precedent. Mr. Bennett was really wrong to say that a 2008 decision should apply. Or should not apply. I mean, the policy has changed drastically since 2008, and there now is a lot more pressure on local authorities to find sites for new housing because of the number of units which each authority has to supply every year. Lewis should deficient in the new housing that they supply. So there is even more pressure on Lewis District Council to find what's called windfall sites, unallocated sites, where they can approve dwellings which contribute to their overall requirement to deliver X hundred houses. Having said that, not every backland site is appropriate, but the yardstick to use is not if this property has an adverse impact on surrounding properties, it must be refused. The test used is, does this property have such a degree of adverse impact on surrounding properties that outweighs the need for additional dwellings in the absence of any other pressing issues. And I think in this case, my advice to you, having seen a lot of these sort of applications determined, is that yes, there will always be an effect on surrounding properties, but given the size and the location, the amount of land available on this site, it wouldn't normally be seen as such an adverse impact to justify a refusal. But things are never black and white. But I think in this situation, as the applicant has complied with what Lewis has asked him to do, given the amount of land available, the committee's previous resolution to support should be upheld. Sorry, I don't see any reason why the application should be refused by Lewis anyway. As far as there was a call for a restrictive covenant. There can't be a restrictive covenant in this case other than between the vendor of the land and the new occupier. It's a private matter. If there is concern about the conversion of the roof, it is possible to ask Lewis, District Council, to impose a condition that any move to provide accommodation in the roof should be the subject of a separate application. But Mr. Grieve has said that given the type of construction of the roof, that would be very difficult anyway. So, but if members are concerned about the possibility of there being accommodation in the roof which would increase the impact on neighbours, the loss of privacy, then it is possible to ask for this condition, irrespective of the type of construction, because it looks on as a pretty standard condition for this sort of application. But I think, and as far as the trees are concerned, whenever there is an application for a building of a property in close proximity to mature trees, there's usually a condition requiring protection of trees. If there's a possibility of any boundary trees, roots coming onto the application site, then they can be plotted, and those areas can be protected from any damage by the plant and the vehicles used during the construction. So, but that's a pretty standard condition anyway as well. So I think that's all I've got to say. I think there was a mention earlier of the driveway which you wanted to mention. Yeah.
Yes, I noticed on the plans that 35 Hillfield Road has got a gravel driveway, and if the committee is minded of supporting this application, I think it should be some other material they use other than shingle, because that can be quite noisy for neighbouring properties, especially as going up.
Again, it would be reasonable to ask for a condition for a sort of suitable surface that's not going to cause an impact. I think there's one thing I missed. Maybe we were talking about backland development. The development at 15A Heathfield Road was granted on appeal. Obviously, Lewis didn't like it, and this committee didn't like it at the time. But if it's been approved on appeal as recently as 2020, then that is a pretty fair precedent, considering this site has far more land available.
Okay. Councillor Honeyman, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Interesting situation, isn't it, really? That's a good way of describing it. So through you, Chair, I guess I'll ask Jeff about better development with obviously dormers on the back. Do not apply in this case, or is it doesn't really quite work like that, you know? So obviously, I think it's one of the key elements of what the nearby residents have mentioned, isn't it? And worried it's going to go double stories, almost as soon as the other one's up, so to speak, isn't it?
So yes, the applicant has said that it would be difficult in this case anyway, but you know, it's still a valid condition if you think that accommodation in the roof would take the balance of the loss of privacy too far in the applicant's direction, if you like.
So I'd be happy with that condition you mentioned. I'd be more happy to support it with that condition. I wouldn't like it otherwise, really.
I mean, I've seen single-storey dwellings where they've taken the roof off completely to make it look like a house.
Well, that's
so I think this is should be.
That's one of the new permitted development rules which we've had problems with. Yes, so you could ask for a condition, for it to be pretty much kept as it is, given the sensitivity of the location. But as I say, it's a question of balancing out the appropriateness of having a house in that space, given the pressure on local authorities to find new space, even for single housing. It's all part of the policy. It does come down to single plots, balancing that between that and the interests of the neighbouring residents.
Okay.
Right.
Can I just quickly come back?
Yes.
Obviously, I know we're not talking about 15, but I mean, it's quite amazing when you see 15, and I think that is overdone. That's just my personal opinion, obviously. So, I think I'm really sure it doesn't look anything like that. So, it's mindful of that.
So we will, Councillor
Chair, is it possible we don't have to make a decision on that, but note, in light of the fact that we've already made a decision, but in light of the things that the residents have brought to us that we've made a note of, can't we put that forward and say that, we make no decision one way or the other?
You already made it.
You have made it, but we are mindful of this and that.
It's not the same application, it's revised plans, so we really need to. We really need. I think there's an onus on you to be consistent, considering the decision was taken only in November, but it wasn't taken with the benefit of first-hand information from the neighbouring residents. I don't think that's enough to justify.
Sorry, I can't.
Justify an about turn. But what you can do is take the concerns of the residents on board and try and ensure that they are protected through the imposition of or the suggestion of imposing conditions that I've mentioned. The chair has mentioned the driveway, a restriction on further development, protection of the trees, being three examples.
Especially the neighbouring
people living in the
put a proposal.
Second that all councillors have spoken as much as they wish to, Chairman. That's what they have, yeah.
Any more comments? No? And you want to make a proposal?
So we've got the conditions list, Jeff, haven't we?
We've got to play the game. I propose that we accept this with conditions.
Yeah.
There's
Well, it's with reluctance, obviously.
Yeah.
Can we put reluctance in it?
Well, we can. You could put in a resolution that you now you've had an opportunity to hear the concerns of the residents at first hand. There are some concerns about the development, and you would look to Lewis to meet those concerns by imposing these conditions. But you're also mindful of the fact that in November the original plan was supported. So just an explanatory resolution of how you where you are now.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's what Councillor Edson's proposing.
Is that fine to second then?
Councillor Archer will second it.
And one other thing, as those splint walls, can we make sure they're protected as well?
Well, yes.
I've got in that.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in a way that's a private thing. It's a bit like
Yeah.
Party Wall Act. You take privately, you can take a schedule of condition of the wall. You know, there's a boundary wall. Usually it's done for internal walls. There's no reason why you can't mention the need to protect the flint walls as
Because
well.
they are historical in the area.
So protection of trees, flint walls, and the driveway, and restriction on the further development of the roof.
Yeah,
Privacy of the neighbours.
and the trees in the neighbouring
Yeah.
properties.
Trees.
Yeah.
So you've got trees, roof,
Protection of
drive,
flint walls and trees, yeah. Right, I've got all those.
Just one
got drains as well.
One other thing, you can't, I mean, obviously, we heard from the residents and in the application it's going to be the landscape when it's all sort of done. I mean, favourable landscape, we can't mention things like that, can we?
Well,
I mean, we know it's going to get done anyway, but
There'll
it's-
be a condition requiring the submission of a landscaping scheme for approval.
yeah, so it's
We could
gonna-
ask to see that landscaping scheme if you like, because
That's a good idea.
every unless there's full landscaping detail on the plan, there would usually be a condition requiring a sort of landscaping and planting scheme. I can inquire about that in the resolution, so that you're concerned about the adequacy of the landscaping between the two properties, the adjoining property to the new dwelling, which is I think 33.
Yeah.
And can we make sure that they do the building in a certain, Monday to Friday?
Oh well, yeah, I
Monday
mean,
to-
that is standard condition.
Yeah.
In a sort of urban setting, there'll be limits on the on work on Saturday. Usually Monday to Friday and Saturday morning is
Yeah.
limited to. Probably doesn't need a full, because it's only one dwelling. It won't need a full construction and environmental management plan, but there will be restrictions on the time of work and
Yeah.
everything like that.
May I
Okay,
just ask
so you've
something?
got-
Nothing to do with
Sorry,
this.
I can't,
We've done
we're still
public
in
participation.
debate, sorry. So,
So, Chair, are you ready to proceed
Yeah.
with the vote as we
Yeah,
had the
so
proposed
can
and
I-
seconded?
have a show of hands of supporting the application with all these conditions as, do you want to
Check
read
this.
them
Yeah,
out, just
yeah,
to
yeah.
remind?
Yeah, come on, Jeff.
Permitted development restriction to ensure that there's no residential accommodation in the roof without a further application. Surfacing of the driveway to ensure there's no noise nuisance to neighbouring properties. Conditions to protect the existing flint walls and the trees on the boundaries of the site, mature trees on the boundaries of the site, and ensure that the landscaping is adequate, either generally or through allowing the town council to give their views on any landscaping scheme that has to be submitted under condition.
Okay, everybody
I
happy
think
with that?
that's everything.
Yeah.
It's the best we can do.
Okay, so can I have a show of hands supporting this application?
Okay, that's everyone, Chair, thank you.
Then members would the public like to leave at
Yeah.
this point?
That's what I've got. Please come here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll wait 5 minutes.
Thank you. All right, no worries. Thank you.
Well, I wouldn't like it. It's built in my
No, I wouldn't either.
It's using the passport.
I think it's very, very wrong.
You know, to justify things like that, you know, that's the sort of thing, it's publicity, you know. Because the time doesn't show the,
There's no objection from this side, are there? Don't you dare.
That sort of so if I had to go down, I wouldn't get that. I don't know if anything else has got questions.
I think you realise you're entertained, you made the decision.
It's
Well, and you know,
I think the campaign against it sort of started a bit late. Yes. If the application comes in, say, a week before the agenda goes out, you know, then objectives will have a chance to get their act together, and so it can go through before we realise any objections. But we have to rely on the 3-week deadline, so, you know, if it comes in, say, 8 days, a couple of days before the agenda's due to go out, I have to put it on the agenda. Unless I know that people, you know, can get permission for an extension of time, I can deal with the civil sisters. So I don't blame them for making resign now, because they would have wanted to go before, but they won't give them an opportunity. That's why I think they need to take their views into account, but we can't really reverse.
Do you think it going to Commissioner Lewis was not big enough? Probably not necessarily.
There's only three objections on the, it's not enough, it's usually 6. At least 6.
you sure there's that many? Did you say that?
3 online, I think.
I thought I counted 9.
Really?
Oh, some more gone?
Well, the other day when I was looking at it.
It wasn't yesterday.
Ah,
It was only 3
that
yesterday.
was,
Some of them, we got loaded the PDF then.
well, some of them went to the first application. You know, the,
I see.
yeah. You see, and Lewis did react to those.
Thank you, patience, Chair.
Did you get that question?
No, it's okay.
The bruises.
Right. We proceed on to LW stroke 23 stroke 0098 12 Fairways Road, single storey rear extension. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Councillor Edson.
Straightforward. You know, you try and look for something that might not be right, but I don't find it. So,
Yeah, it's a very large block.
yeah, I'm okay with this one. I propose we accept this one.
Okay.
Yes, I'll second
Seconded
it.
by Councillor Honeyman. Any other comments? Right, can I have a show of hands supporting this application?
So everyone, Chair, thank you.
LW/23/0137, 7 Kingston Close, first floor rear dormer, front roof window and existing front dormer reduction. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee.
I remember not so long ago we had a conversation about a rear dormer that went the entire, and I didn't like it, but the committee accepted it, and it was, as far as I'm aware, it went through. So, judging from popular, I can't see anything wrong with it. A neighbour objects, but I don't think that they're going to be.
We can't see how it would restrict sunlight and daylight because it's such a small structure. It doesn't go the whole length of the extension or anything like that. It's relatively small. They say they've got problems with the ground floor extension already. Well, from the way the house faces, I mean the rear faces south. I would have thought it would still get its fair share of daylight and sunlight. So it may be that the neighbour just doesn't like the owner, or but I mean there shouldn't, given the orientation, there shouldn't be any problems with daylight and sunlight to the kitchen, although it's adjacent to it. So you can't really justify anything other than supporting it.
So therefore we see no reason why we should object to this one, so I propose we support.
Thank you. Any other comments? And can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
Thank you, Chair. That's everybody.
LW/23/0101, 62 Lexton Drive, single storey rear and side extension. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Would you like to lead on this, Councillor Hanneman?
Well, I can't see any problem. It's all very low level extension, and so I thought we'd just accept really.
It's got a bit of wrap round.
It's a small wraparound, yeah. It doesn't project any further, much further than existing.
No, so I'm happy to support.
Is that fine to seconder? Thank you, Councillor Edson. Anything else? Anybody comments? Can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
Everyone, Chair, thank you.
Who's the tree expert?
Tree Works.
Looks like we have the
TW/23/0021/TCA 9 and 11 Blatchington Hill. I won't read out all the individual trees, but as read. So any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee.
Chair, we are reminded of the bird nesting season.
Yes.
And we must be very close.
I think they're active now, aren't they?
So, could that
I'm sure
be something
the tree officer knows that better than us, I would have thought. So yes, they'll make sure that that's protected. And also, I think the reduction's a little bit excessive compared to the usual applications, but again, it's really for the tree officer to look and maybe reduce the level of reduction if he's concerned. But and again, the timing of the works is something that the tree officer can impose. But there's no harm in expressing our concern that work shouldn't be carried out during the nesting season, i.e. currently and for the next few months, which shows we're concerned as well, which we are.
Could we show that we're concerned with the height of the cuts?
We could say that there's some concern over the extent of some of the reductions, but we leave that to the arboricultural officer to discuss with the owner. As I say, the problem is with these applications we don't have expert input, but we have a fair idea of what the average crown reduction is, and it's it's often 2 or 3 metres as opposed to 4 or 5. So we can point out that and the nesting season in our response, and the tree officer will take it on board hopefully before it's before it's determined.
Okay. Councillor Hyman?
It's on, I mean, obviously, one of those, it's a double property essentially. I mean, it's on the hillside as well, so I think it needs to be done. You've got that side of things, isn't it? Going up the hill. And I don't think you can't basically, I don't think it's the right place. So, yeah, you can't ignore them. It's very dominant, the trees going up and hill. So it's, obviously don't know the exact plots of all these.
Yeah, it's a sensitive area.
Yes, I'm sure it's,
Yeah.
I mean, this particular applicant did look
Yeah.
okay by a professional.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put down those 2 provisos and we can add those.
Okay, so can I have a proposal and a second? Councillor Edson, seconded by Councillor Hunman. And can I have a show of hands supporting this application?
Second one, Chair, thank you.
Tree Works South Downs National Park, SDNP/23/01007/TCA, Manor Farm Buildings, Manor Yard, Bishopstone Village.
Chair, I think it was a bit short on some, if I remember, when I first looked at it, there were pictures there, but I couldn't really say. But reading this, there's only a 2-foot reduction down to old prune, which, and bearing in fact that it's an elm, which should be protected at all costs.
It's
So
one of the,
hopefully this will do the tree more good than harm.
it's one of the more minor applications that we
Yeah.
do. You know, the level of work is quite minor. So, yeah. So it could be that it's because it's a tree that's well maintained. You know that they apply to do this every year, whereas some tree owners sort of wait for 3 or 4 years and then do a sort of bigger job on it. But 2 foot to old pruning points is nothing really. So there's no problem with it as far as I'm concerned.
Alright, so I propose that we accept this one.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Hunman. And can I have a show of hands, please, supporting this application?
That's unanimous, thank you everyone. 3 people in the vote, thank you.
Agenda item 5, page 6. To notify the committee on application LW/22/0356, proposed development by McCarthy of Seaford Constitution Club site, Crouch Lane, to provide 40 retirement apartments and new on-site premises for the club.
If I could just introduce.
Do you want to take public comments
That's
first?
what I was
do you
just
want-
going to say,
Of
do
course,
shall I withdraw
yeah.
standing orders?
Let's do standing orders,
Is the committee happy that I withdraw standing orders so
Yep.
members of the public can speak on this one? Thank you.
Okay, they're withdrawn, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Could I just ask a question? 30th June 2022, the council here objected to the plans, correct? So this bit is slightly different to everything else that's gone on this evening.
Correct.
Yeah. And the reason we're here again is because of Lewis DC's inaction, so therefore McCarthy and Stone are pushing it to an appeal. Am I right?
That's rather a harsh way of putting it, but I can explain it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not.
So at the moment we're looking at a route to object to the appeals.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. Do I have to stand?
It's up to you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to start with a thank you to Mr Johnson and to Councillor Brett from the Liberal Dems, because they have been so helpful in the last 48 hours. So thank you very much. I do understand that Mr Johnson has a report to write before the 6th of April,
and he's very kindly said if we put any more comments through to him, he will include them in his report. I'm hoping other people in the neighbourhood would do the same. I will go through the issues you've highlighted here, the reason for your rejection before. And I do understand Mr Johnson said about the 12-week gap or something before Lewes District Council can get to planning applications, whatever, and lack of staff. In terms of the infrastructure, point one, I can actually say in the last fortnight I had to move a dental appointment. They couldn't offer me another NHS appointment because they didn't have an NHS dentist. We all know that one of the surgeries in particular is covered by more paramedics, etc., because they can't get enough doctors. I tried to move a podiatry appointment yesterday, couldn't give me anything, 2 weeks either side of what I wanted to move. Now, old age people require all these facilities, and when they require them much longer period of time with a doctor, etc., than the average. And I think that is one reason why we should be saying no to McCarthy and Stone. We don't need any more old age pensioners. I'm an old age pensioner. We need young people in Seaford, and we need housing for young people. Overdevelopment, definitely overdevelopment of retirement homes. I wonder if, as a council, you can find the particulars of how many empty retirement flats or apartments we've currently got. Because when we were here in June, there was something like 40 up for sale. I also understand once you buy it and try to resell it, you can actually lose money. You've mentioned about how affordable housing, I've mentioned. Highways should be very, very concerned. That is a very, very narrow area of land. And if you're going to put another huge building there with roads that have there's no pavements or very few pavements there, there's no real sense of order in one sense, and it also is extremely dangerous if you're going to put any more of that vehicles there, plus any building vehicles. It's a thoroughfare for the young people who go to Seaford Head School. Morning and afternoon, I see them from my window, lots of them. And if we're going to have even more people in that area, it's going to be a danger, and highways should be aware of that and actually should be refusing it unless they want to be responsible for any awful accidents. Parking, we all know parking is, the car parks in Seaford are full. This building suggests they'll have enough parking if you put the club in there. I think they've allocated something like 5 or 6 parking spaces. I think they're assuming they can use the car park across the road, but that's always full. That's more people. On the point of the club itself, there are so many we go in occasionally for a meeting. There's never anybody in there. So where the members are, why there is a need for this is something else, and it also could be a danger to being accessible to people who might not treat it properly. I don't really understand how many people they're expecting to go in there. Drainage is a nightmare. I can tell you, even in the last 2 months, we've had vans up Crouchfield Close and onto Crouchfield, etc., draining the drains, finding blockages, things like that. And, the 2016 SUDGE report said the whole issue of sewage, flooding could happen. And if you're going to put another 40 homes in that area, it's going to get 10 times worse, well, more than 10 times worse, the problem itself. And we don't want flooding. And then we had the sinkhole last summer. So what is the structure like underneath there? For possibly more. I also would like to point out that whole area is quite unique. It's on the old town boundaries, isn't it? It's got so much historical significance,
Yeah.
do we really want something else spoiling it? And I know my time's going.
Yeah, I'm afraid you've had 5 minutes. I've let you go over.
Right.
But if there's something really quick,
Yes, the whole conservation area, it's an invasion of my privacy, let alone everybody else's. The whole thing will be a nuisance and a danger to the community.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else like to make any comment? I'll go to...
Do you want to
Yeah,
go first?
no,
I'll go
we'll do
last.
Councillor Brett
I
last.
will stand up for a minute if no one
Go for
wants.
it. Go for
Oh
it.
yeah, I'm Kathy Tadman. I live literally over the road from Connie. Even though the McCarthy and Stone site won't affect me visually, I hope, I'm gravely concerned about the volume of trucks, mechanical vehicles that are coming up and down Crouch Lane. As you come up Crouch Lane, on the right hand side, you've got the car park first on the left hand side, sorry, and then you've got what I believe is an aided or sheltered accommodation unit. What's going to happen if this gets passed and an ambulance is needed for one of these elderly people? The road just is not wide enough. Also the children. There's hundreds of them that walk down Stane Road. The corner's very blind. They are blind going up to Crouch Lane from Stane Road. You haven't got a proper view. I'm sorry, but in my opinion, it's just not going to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Brett.
Councillor Christine Brett, District Councillor for Seaford South. I just want to say that I fully support what the residents have said, and I could have said a lot more as well, and I will continue to object to this ill thought out, inappropriate plan. And may I commend Mr Johnson for the thorough way he's approaching this appeal and the use of STC to agree, and I urge STC to agree to seeking Rule 6 status, because this will make sense to the residents who, like myself, may be attending the hearing, which is actually going to be this time a full inquiry, and I've never been to a full inquiry. I don't think we've had one for some time. Hawksley, I think, may have been the last one, Chair. Was that right?
Sorry?
Was Hawksley a full inquiry? Was it? I can't remember. Well, it was before my time. Anyway, we haven't had one for a very long time. And I know from just going to the Wandale appeal hearing that we had for Churchill, it's a very stressful experience, an emotional experience for everybody. So I would just please urge you to commend that to Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put standing rules back, Chair.
Right. Committee members happy for bringing in standing orders again?
Yep.
Can I show of hands, please? Thank you.
Is everyone, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you.
You're back.
All right.
Can I just make a few comments?
Yes, do.
Just filling in the background, just to what Mr Hughes said, just to explain it for the benefit of the other interested parties here. Yes, there was an application in the summer which we objected to in quite a lot of detail on the 30th of June. That application went back to Lewis, and what would normally happen would be they would either they would look at the plans, they would decide whether they were acceptable, or if there were concerns about the plans, they go back to the applicants to discuss maybe some modifications, or they could just say to the applicants, well, we have to refuse this. It was delayed because the officer the case officer who originally dealt with the application in the summer, Mr Bagshaw, Tom Bagshaw, left, and it took some time for another officer, because it was a major application, it took some time for another officer to pick up the reins, if you like. But in November, the new officer made quite a detailed critique of 4 or 5 issues in the plans. As I say, it was over the 12-week deadline, but nearly all applications like this go over the deadline because the local authority haven't really got the resources to comply with the deadline. It takes a long time to process them. McCarthy and Stone would usually have been expected to perhaps have negotiated some revisions to meet the local authorities' concern. They didn't in this case. They said that they thought their application was okay as it stood. That may be because they thought that the Lewes District Council's criticism of the plans was at a level where they couldn't really meet it with any suggested amendments, so, which is a good sign, obviously. I think there's no doubt that Lewes, despite the delay, are committed to opposing this from the tone of the issues that they've raised. McCarthy and Stone, just like Churchill, are quite aggressive as applicants, and instead of waiting for a refusal or negotiating some amendments, they decided to take advantage of the fact that after 12 weeks, if there's no decision, they have a right to appeal. It's not often used, that rule, because most applicants like to negotiate with a local authority, and if they find the local authority are opposing it and recommending a refusal, then often those plans will be withdrawn completely so that the applicant will avoid the black mark of a refusal. Well, McCarthy and Stone are a bit different. They are more aggressive, as I say. They don't fear a refusal. In this case, they just wanted to save time. They put it in appeal, but it's likely that Lewes would have refused it anyway. So that's the situation. You can't criticise Lewes, as I say. Like most authorities nowadays, find it very difficult to keep to the statutory deadlines for processing applications. So, as I say, that is quite encouraging, because it seems as if Lewes District Council are as opposed to the application of the scheme as Seaford Town Council are, which makes it easy to work with them. I mean, there may be some issues which Lewes aren't concerned so much about, like local infrastructure. Lewes wouldn't usually bring that forward as a concern, because there's doubt as to whether it's a planning consideration which you can place much weight on. But we feel, as a town, that we've got to express that concern. It's been raised in so many other major applications recently, like Newlands, and there is it's all usually the first line of objection that residents come out with to major applications, such as the Churchill one and this one. The first line of objection is the effect on health services, because that is what people are worried about. It's the simple truth. And residents have a right to expect genuine concerns like that to be taken into account by the planning system. The truth is that they're not given as much weight as they should be. So I see my job as putting the Town Council's case to try and ensure that sufficient weight is put on there, because that's what the town, that's what the majority of people in the town want. I know that from the feedback I've had from all the other major applications there's been in the last few years. So I'm putting together a case for the council and represent the council at the inquiry. The reason for the holding a 4-day inquiry is firstly that McCarthy and Stone have requested it, and secondly, although the planning inspectorate has a right to say no, we think it should be something lesser, like an informal hearing. The fact that McCarthy and Stone have said that they're intending to call 5 expert witnesses at the moment, that's what probably persuaded the inspectorate that it needs an inquiry rather than just a 1-day hearing, which is the next level down. And I don't think there's been an inquiry in Seaford since Eversley Court, which is about 10 years ago, although I only came here into this job 6 years ago. There hasn't been an inquiry since then. There's a lot less inquiries going around. Lewes probably only have about 1 or 2 inquiries a year. Recent ones have just been into major housing developments in Newick and Ringmer. So they are quite rare, and they need a certain level of representation and quite a lot of work. But we will be doing that on behalf of the town council and the town's residents. I hope to work closely with Mrs. Hughes, Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, and other residents who want to come forward to speak at the inquiry, because, as I say, I will be able to if you like, call them as witnesses rather than have them just as sort of independent persons. They will be part of our case. And so I'll be working on that in the next few months, seeing what other residents who might be willing to come forward. But it was a very beneficial meeting that I had yesterday with Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, and I'll be, well, I could ask Mrs. Hughes to circulate other residents or do some work myself, or through Councillor Brett, in finding out other residents who might want to come forward to help the case, if you like. So really that's it. The statement of case is due in on April the 6th, and that's almost complete. It will sort of elaborate on the points that we raised in our objection, which was quite a lengthy objection to the application after the 30th of June meeting. There's one thing I should mention. This comes closely after the appeal decision on the Churchill development case at 80. They were intending to knock down the four houses at 83 to 89 Sutton Road and build a block of 35 retirement apartments. That went to an informal hearing in November, and the decision in December last year was to allow a lesser scheme, which was one apartment less than the first scheme. So, but since then, there has been confirmation locally that one of the houses that was due to be knocked down was sort of restored to make it saleable, and was put on the market through Philip Mann's estate agents and has been sold. I don't know if it's sold subject to contract, probably too soon to be sold completely, but it's been sold. And the other thing I've been told is that despite the fact that this committee at the last meeting considered a construction and environmental management plan, if you recall, all about parking and dates of work and and times of delivery, and we suggested using a parking area in the Downs, the overflow parking area. Well, since then, in 3 weeks since then, the application for that plan to be approved has been withdrawn. So, adding that to the fact that Philip Mann has apparently sold this dwelling, it looks like the scheme has been shelved. And the rumour going round is, I can't confirm it, is that there's a slow market, and that Churchill, who have a 62 apartment scheme ongoing at Eastbourne, just before by the traffic lights, just before the railway station, haven't sold as many of those apartments as they envisaged they would. In other words, the market has slowed down, so they've suddenly got cold feet on the Seaford scheme and have withdrawn it, although they still retain the benefit of the consent for, well, they have 3 years to implement, to start it. So we don't know what's going on at Churchill, but we do know that it's not going to start in April, which was what was said in the plan which we considered last time. So that is an encouragement, because if McCarthy and Stone are saying that there's a need and a market for this sort of accommodation, but certainly if there was a need and a market for it, then Churchill, having gone through an expensive application and appeal process, would be going ahead with their scheme next month as they envisage. So
that's true, although I would be cautious about the fact that that could be flipped the other way.
Yes.
By McCarthy and Stone saying now Churchill's been
now there's an opportunity for us to fill the gap.
And that one was approved, therefore the need for this
well,
accepted. So that one could go both ways.
I'll make sure the argument's slanted in our direction.
Of course.
Ignore the rest. But yes, it's true. But I think we can use it to our advantage, and it's certainly good news as far as people in Sutton Road is concerned. So that's all I have to add, really. I'm just working on the statement of case. That'll be submitted early next week, and I'll be doing some work with Lewis, and particularly what Mrs. Hughes requested yesterday, which was to get the officer from Lewis up to the site so that we can give the residents some idea of actually the distance between the boundary and the built form. I mean, there's where Mrs. Hughes lives, there'll be a garden, she'll overlook a garden, but how narrow that garden is, it's very difficult to tell from the plans. The plans are very, in that area, they're very sketchy. You can see that there's a garden there, and we can see that the houses at the bottom of the hill will have only a car park between them and the highest part of the building, so they'll be impacted. But it'll be good to have the officer come over with the plan, and we can then work out exactly what the dimensions will be and the distances between the built form and the boundary of the site, and the windows of Churchfield Square, Churchfield Close, and other adjoining properties to the west as well, in the listed building and it's housing association block next to it, in Crouch Lane.
That's right.
So, but I mean that's obviously over the lane as well. I think I've said enough today. So, obviously, if there's any questions from members.
Thank you. Any members like to have any
Yeah,
further
just a
comment?
couple of observations. So it's obviously if one of the houses has been sold by Fairman, then obviously you're going to get searches done. I mean, you don't know what might come up, so that might that's not necessarily going to go through, is it really? And also on the flip side of that, in the sense of if maybe the petition's shown after general election or whatever in the next year or two, there's still a chance it can still go ahead then. But I know we're not particularly talking about this particular development, but at Sutton Road there, could that still go ahead?
Can we keep to...
oh, okay. That's
to
another
the
I speculated,
parking
wasn't I?
stone, please?
Yeah, okay, I speculated.
Thank
It's
you.
my fault.
That's right. If any further
On this one?
comments on the carving and stone?
Yeah, in the sense of, can we be months away? At the end of the year, would you project for an inquiry? Would it
Oh no, the inquiry. Sorry, yeah, I sent an email round updating the report.
Right, hang on.
The inquiry's on the 18th to the 22nd of July.
Yeah.
I should have put it in the report,
My fault.
but I missed it because it was on the, one of the letters on the list, which I thought was just giving the starting date of the appeal.
I'm happy with what we discussed.
Anybody else?
There's
Any
space
first
to see what
comments?
together, really, isn't it?
No? No? Committee...
There's a list of, there's a little list there.
The committee is recommended to note the submission of the appeal and authorise the planning officer, A, to submit a statement of case before 6th of April, and B, to seek Rule 6 status from the planning inspectorate and to represent the town council at the inquiry. Can I have a proposer and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Argent, and seconded by Councillor Edson. And a show of hands, please.
Is everyone, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all that, Jeff. Agenda items.
You're willing to take the risk, Jeff.
Agenda 6 to present. Agenda item 6 to present details of proposed road closures applications for the street parties for the coronation and the French market for this committee to comment on. Otherwise, we note the report. Any comments on this?
Not really.
These will be the last ones, I think, because the
got long, haven't
the application deadline.
4 houses.
Yeah, there's about 4 or 5, which is about half the number, maybe.
6 weeks before.
Yeah, I think the deadline is quite soon.
Well, there could be some informal ones, I suppose, on pavements, I suppose, but it's different, isn't it?
But only mayor's nearly here, so
it's a fair number. The main one is in the High Street. It was the first one that was approved. So there's obviously no reason to object to any of them, or the French market, which is a same as
Well established, isn't it?
yeah.
Do members want to support this?
Oh, absolutely,
proposed
yeah.
budget?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can I have a proposer and seconder? Thank you. Councillor Argent, seconded by Councillor Edson, that we support these road closures. Show of hands, please. Councillor
Are
Argent?
you voting? Oh, you can't.
Oh,
vote,
you
sorry.
can't. No, you
Mark,
can't.
I'm so
no.
sorry. He's correct to keep his
Sorry.
hand to his side.
Thank you. Agenda item 7. To inform the committee of work currently being carried out by the South Downs National Park Authority on its local plan review and parish priority statements. Jeff, do you want to-
This really is just for information because it doesn't directly involve Seaford. It's just to let members know what's going on in the South Downs local plan review, and there's sort of parallel actions going on in the Lewis local plan review as well. They're looking at services in the villages, in particular, to update themselves on what services the villages or parishes in the area have and what they don't have, and so that eventually they can grade them according to which settlements or villages can absorb some new development, which villages would actually welcome new development to support essential services, and what villages are totally unsuitable for more than just a token 1, 2 or 3 unit redevelopment, and don't have the services to support new development. The South Downs one's particularly interesting because they're having a parish priority statement procedure. It's similar to a procedure which is coming in and is proposed to come in under the new Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, which might become an act later in this parliamentary year. And one of the things in there is for parish and neighbourhood priority statements, which is a procedure that falls short of a neighbourhood plan, but nevertheless involves the public of a parish or an urban neighbourhood where those neighbourhoods can be defined. The local authority concerned, either the parish council or the district council, if it's an urban neighbourhood, have to set out all the services that are available there, the transport services, shopping facilities, community facilities. And the most important thing is that they have to consult or they have to make sure that all the public, all the population of the neighbourhood or parish are involved in consultation and given a chance to submit their views on the current state of facilities in the parish and their hopes for the future. It could cover housing, could cover employment, could cover community facilities, sports facilities, leisure facilities. So it's really like a sort of a neighbourhood plan light, so that there is a complete survey of hopefully the whole country as far as rural parishes are concerned, because a lot of them still don't have neighbourhood plans because they haven't really got the resources or the need to have a full neighbourhood plan. But nevertheless, there needs to be on record what the public in these villages lack, what they want, what their aspirations are, what new development is needed, etc., etc., etc. So South Downs are doing this as part of the review of the local plan to all the settlements in the South Downs that either lay completely within the national park or whose main settlement lies within the national park. So that unfortunately doesn't include Seaford, although Bishopstone is not a separate parish, but as a settlement or hamlet, it lies in the national park, but that has sufficient protection anyway from being mostly a conservation area from its historical character. Because of its proximity to Seaford, it doesn't have to worry too much about facilities and transport services because it's already got a basic transport service anyway. So, but it's really so to inform members of what's going on. A similar study, updating the rural settlement study that was implemented for the 2016 local plan. That's being updated for Lewis as well, but as I say, for the South Downs National Park, it's much more elaborate. It's more like an informal neighbourhood or village plan, which, as I say, is extended to neighbourhoods by the bill that's going through Parliament. So all neighbourhoods that are sort of suitable for that sort of survey will have the public will have a chance to say what they lack and what they want. Not that it might make a lot of difference, but you know, at least they have a chance to speak out. Okay, that's it's really just for information to let you know what's going on.
Any questions?
Well, you know, I'll neglect you. Just one question. Obviously, something like Lewis, which is obviously totally enclosed, Lewis Town even, they have a neighbourhood plan. So would they effectively, the National Park would know that neighbourhood plan anyway?
I think it would. Yeah. It's not really aimed at Lewis. I mean,
no, it's more the smaller.
It's aimed at the smaller settlements and parishes. Yeah, so Lewis obviously is entirely within the national park.
Yeah,
they couldn't really avoid that because it's surrounded by, you know.
Lewis Town's looking at everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
yeah, I mean, the fact that the national park has to deal with Lewis's urban, householder extensions, things like that, is probably something that they would want to do without, but they can't avoid it because it's all within the same boundary. It's all within the same park. But yes, I mean, so Lewis looks after itself in a way. It's the rural parishes, Hampshire, West Sussex and East Sussex.
There's quite a lot of those you go west Sussex, into Hampshire, we go inland a bit, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're the ones that are more interested.
There's a lot of settlements there, which it's more populous because it's more inland, as you say, around Midhurst way.
Yeah.
I mean, I always resent the fact that the national park says, welcome to Midhurst, the centre of the South Downs National Park. I always think that the east gets a bit neglected, but there's a lot more people, there's a lot more settlements, as you say, in West Sussex going into Hampshire. So it's sort of it's got its own importance as far as that goes.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Chair. That's great.
Thank you. So there's no other questions. You're recommended to note the contents of the report. Noted?
Yeah,
noted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
And then finally, agenda item 8. I think this is more or less straightforward as approvals by LDC and no objections from us, and that's all.
Yes, so the Stane Road approval, so that might be going ahead quite soon, and nothing else to mention.
Okay, unless there's any questions?
It's the favourable report.
Yes, approved, 100%.
So can we note the report, please?
Yes, the report.
Noted. Thank you. And that concludes the meeting at 8:39. 8:37.
8:37.
8:37.